Hey guys, it is Woody. Um, so I know I haven't made a video in a while. I've got some stuff going on right now. It's got me pretty busy lately. A little bit stressed out, but it's definitely a growing experience. And I kind of, what I'm about to share with you leads up to this point in my life. And, you know, my last video didn't get a whole lot of views. You know, it was on the Bible, and, you know, Bible translations and things like that. But that's okay. I think, you know, right now this is where my channel is leading. You know, and I might still have some reviews here and there, I don't know. But right now I feel that it's time for me to, you know, make a public statement, a public proclamation, if you will. And you know, I just feel like I need to share my story with all of you who are willing to listen. This will not be a short video, so be prepared. I will try to keep it short if I can. I'll try not to be too long-winded like I am right now. But anyway, I'm gonna take this off for a minute. You know, try to look nice as I can. Anyway, but okay. So I'm gonna share my testimony with all of you. You know, and my journey with Christ. You know, I was born, you know, in Texas on an army base out there, and you know, a lot of what I remember from that time, you know, I don't really remember much. I remember, you know, people, you know, and things like that. But you know, and I moved around a lot. You know, I was in Texas until I was about 5 years old. I moved to Georgia, and you know, went to a few different elementary schools there, and you know, made friends. It was pretty much like any other childhood, you know, except I lived in the woods a lot. I would wake up in the morning and go out and play in the woods, and come home, you know, to eat and shower and sleep. But other than that, I was outside all the time. But my parents would take me to church, you know, occasionally. And if it was a regular thing, I don't remember. Like I said, I was young. But I do remember going to church occasionally. I remember my dad getting baptized. And, you know, I remember that was pretty much where, you know, I got introduced to church, at least. And, you know, later on, I was about 8 or 9, and I moved to Las Vegas, Nevada. And, you know, it was a little bit of adjustment. And I didn't realize it, but I didn't realize it then. Anyway, my parents worked their butts off to, you know, get us a home and all of that. Now, my parents were previously divorced. I don't remember that. I remember them not being together. I don't remember the actual divorce. I was too young, I guess. But I remember, hanging out with my dad and hanging out with my mom, but not together. Somewhere along the way, they got back together. They got remarried. Then we moved to Vegas, and my parents got divorced again. I was about 9 years old, and at the time it was really hard for me, and then my parents ended up moving on with their lives, and it actually became a blessing for me, because growing up, I had two sets of parents. I had two dads, I had two moms. I always saw it that way. And my family actually grew. For me, it wasn't a broken family. It grew, over time. I ended up getting 3 sisters and a brother out of it. I'm an only child. So I had 2 Christmases, 2 birthdays, so maybe I was just blessed with that thought process, or just whatever. But when my mom met my stepdad, he was he had religious background when he was younger, and my mom knew about it, and my mom was thirsting for something spiritual, I think, because every time we would pass by a church, she would ask him, is that the church that we would go to if we went to church? And he's like, yeah, wasn't really interested. And in the meantime, my dad, his mother-in-law, she was very religious, and I would go to church, every other weekend with her and my sister, and so I started kind of getting that whole Sunday school thing, and all that stuff. And then something happened. My mom, my stepdad, and I were heading out to see my grandparents, his parents. And when we got there, his sister was there, and he was really surprised to see her. I didn't know you were going to be here, and it turned out that his dad had died the night before of a heart attack, and just very suddenly, very quickly, and it was pretty devastating to all of us. And that opened up a spiritual experience for my stepdad, and he went for a walk by himself, and it was at that time that he felt a calling, like he had to do something. And God called him to it. So we started getting involved in church. We went to his church, and we got involved, and so this is where my spiritual path really took off. And we went to church for a long time, and then during that time, so I was going to one church of one Christian faith, and on every other weekend going to another church of another Christian faith, and it was so conflicting. The beliefs, even though, you know, they both have the Bible, you know, you have this side who is like completely against this religion. And so I would go to church every other weekend and just hear all the bashing from, you know, the church that I go to, you know. And so I got into a lot of arguments and debates with my grandmother, who was going to that church. And you know, it wasn't really healthy. It wasn't productive. You know, it wasn't, you know, a real good spiritual experience for me. And then, you know, as I got older, I started to, you know, kind of push aside religion altogether, because, you know, these Christians can't get along with these Christians, but they're both Christians, and, you know, it didn't vibe with me, I guess you could say. And, you know, age 13, I started partying, you know, drinking, smoking weed, and, you know, that was my thing. And that's pretty much what I did most of my life. And oddly enough, I was seeking out spiritual wholeness. Like I was looking at, you know, all these different books that would kind of fill this hole that I had, all the while, you know, drinking and partying and everything else. And you know, I was just going further and further and further, you know, down a destructive path. I eventually found Satanism, and I read the Satanic Bible, and it clicked with me. There's a lot of things in it that I related to and that I agreed with. And I eventually, you know, I got a satanic tattoo. And I think part of it was a little bit of rebellion, you know, against my religious family on both sides. And so, you know, I have that. And honestly, if I were to get any tattoo removed or covered up, that would be the one, because, you know, it's not what I stand for anymore. And I'm going to get to that. So, you know, I found Satanism, and that's what I went with for a very long time. And still going down a very destructive path, even though, you know, one of the satanic standards is, you know, you want to prolong your life, and I was doing the exact opposite of that. So when I was about 19, I ended up I had been dating a girl in high school, and I ended up breaking up with her, and then I moved in with my dad in another state, and I came out one day to visit my parents, and got in touch with her. I don't know. We always stayed friends, but I got in touch with her. We hung out, and, you know, there was still chemistry there. So I decided to move back. Well, she had a constant religious upbringing. So I came back. and I was living with my parents. I was about 19, and we ended up getting back together. Well, I started going to church with her, and I was a musician also, and I had dedicated my life to Christ at that time, and I wanted to do something for Christ. I wanted to I didn't just want to be stagnant and just be somebody who just goes to church on the weekends. I wanted to do something. And music, I love music. So she found this band, and I was trying out for other bands too, not just Christian bands. And in fact, honestly, I wasn't really thinking about a Christian band. I just wanted to play music. And she came to me with this band who was looking for a bassist, and they were a Christian band. So I was like, okay, so I'll go and I'll try out for them. And I went and I tried out, and I'm just sitting there thinking, I was like, these guys are good. Like, I'm not even on these guys' level. These guys are good. And so, we left, and I'm like, there's no way they're going to call me back. And all these other bands that I've been trying out for, I'm like, they're not good enough. Like, I wanted a good band, and then I find a good band who plays for God, and I'm like, I'm not good enough. So, devil kind of lying to you there. So turns out they called me back. They wanted me in their band, and that's what we did. I played in that band. We played for a while. We actually got some momentum behind us, and we played a lot of churches. There was one band that is still together today, Ever Stays Red. If you have a chance, look them up. Great guys, great music, spirit-filled. But anyway, played with them a lot. We'd invite them to play at our shows. They would invite us to play at their shows. It was really cool. During this time, I had married that girl. We had a son, and and then things started happening with the band. One member in particular, and things started falling apart. I started seeing a destructive side of him, and eventually the band broke up, and that hurt me really bad, because all I wanted to do was play in a band all my life. And I had little bands here and there, but this one, it was a successful band. I could see it going places, and the things that we did in the name of God, the things that I saw happen, the things that I witnessed, all of that was gone in my eyes. All of it was gone. So once again, this whole church thing didn't work out, and I started feeling sorry for myself, and started drinking again. And my wife and I started arguing a lot. She wanted things, okay, that I didn't think I should have to work for. And what did she want? She wanted a nice house for our son to grow up in. She wanted to live in a nice neighborhood for our son to grow up in. And in my drinking and things like that, I didn't see a need for that. That's we have a good place now, and it really wasn't a great place. So we fought for a long time, and eventually I told her that, because divorce had been thrown around a few times, and I told her, the next time you bring that up, you better have paper in your hand, papers in your hand. Sure enough, one day she came in with divorce papers, and I was like, okay, so she moved out, she took my son, and my partying life pretty much increased from that point. I didn't have anything keeping me back. And the part that really hit me was I pretty sure I got evicted from that place because I wasn't taking my job seriously. I wasn't really taking anything seriously, but I was moving out, and I had pretty much everything out, and everything was fine. I was doing the last touches. I was vacuuming the house, and the one room I had avoided was my son's room. And when I got to his room to vacuum his room, I pretty much just went in the middle of the room and sat down, and I cried, because that's when I realized, I messed up. So anyway, my life pretty much continued that way for a long time. Thinking I wanted what was best for my son, and this fear in my head that she was going to take him from me. And, and this went on for probably 11 years. And, and I had girlfriends, that were like, why don't you fight for custody? Why don't you try to get him? And I'm like, look at how I'm living. Look at how I'm living. Not just the drugs and stuff like that. Like in my head, I can cut that stuff out. But look at where I'm living, and the neighborhood, and all this stuff. I'm like, and where he is now, he's got, she ended up later, she ended up remarrying. But even before that, I felt like she was providing him with everything that he needed. And if I can't do that for him, why am I going to take him away from that? And then later on, she ended up remarrying. And it was kind of the same thing. He ended up getting a family. Her husband had a son. So now my son had a big brother to look up to. And as time went on, his family grew. Good neighborhood, good house, great schools, all his life. And of course, now how am I ever going to be able to provide something better than that for him? So, I ended up joining the Army, as an effort to clean my life up. I was pretty much at a dead end. My dad, had suggested, maybe you need to enlist. My dad served in the Army. My grandfather served in the Navy in World War II. It was kind of in the family thing. And so what I did was I chose an MOS that I could use when I got out. At that time, music was still a big thing in my life. All my friends, they did recording. They would record music and, make CDs and things like that. And if you weren't making music, then you were producing and editing music. Well, nobody was making videos, so I wanted to be the guy making the videos. So I chose an MOS that was 25 Victor Combat Documentation Production Specialist. I figured that was something that I could use once I got out. And then enlisted, went through basic training, graduated basic training, proudest day of my life, because in order for me to pass the final PT test, you know, you had to run the 2 miles in under, I think it was like 14 minutes, 13 or 14 minutes, which really isn't that hard. I used to run cross country. That wasn't the issue. The issue was I had a sprained ankle, and it's not something that you can postpone and do later. If you don't pass the PT test, you go back into training. And I had worked so hard. I had, you know, I still have a medal that, you know, I carry with me on my shower bag, you know, and so I'm like, I can't not do this. You know, my son is proud of me for once. My father was proud of me. My mother is proud of me. Like, my family is proud of me. I can't not do this. So I ran, and I'll tell you, after about the first 2 laps, that throbbing pain, I had the adrenaline going and the endorphins and all that stuff. I didn't really feel it much after that. I finished, I crossed the finish line, and I stopped running. And when I stopped running, that ankle swelled up. But I passed. So that was a very proud moment in my life. And I went on to AIT and got put on what they call AFI, which is awaiting further instructions. But during that time, I met probably the best friend I have, and I still talk to him to this day. You know, we've literally bled for each other, you know, even though we weren't deployed. You know, we bonded very closely. And so I ended up getting cabin fever, I guess. I don't know. I was sitting in, most of the time, a 12 by 12 room with 2 other guys. I was getting stir crazy, you know, kind of bouncing off the walls, you know, up and down emotions. Hadn't been home for a long time, hadn't seen my son in a long time, and, you know, I was kind of going crazy, you know, or, you know, I didn't feel like that, but anyway, it was suggested to me that I go and talk to somebody. I'm like, all right. Well, while I was in there, the psych asked me if I wanted out. And I was like, no. Like, I enlisted in this job for a specific reason. You know, I wanted the education, I wanted the experience, and I wanted something that I could fall back on or just get into a career once I got out. You know, I planned on serving, and this is what I want to do. She's like, all right, well, I'll put in a recommendation to your captain. And I was like, great. And on, you know, future visits, because now I'm making appointments. You know, you go and see them once, then they're like, okay, well, come back and see me next week. And 3 times she asked me if I wanted out, and I said, I do not want out, I want to stay in. I was seeing another psychiatrist. I went and saw another one. He asked me the same thing. I said, no, I don't want out. So eventually, anyway, I got discharged, honorable discharge, and yeah, so moved on with my life again. Moved to Arizona, moved to Kentucky, lived there for a while, had a pretty decent job. It kind of sucked, but the pay was really good. 70 hours a week. Didn't really have time to spend money a whole lot. Eventually broke up with a girlfriend there, moved back to Arizona, and drugs. Drugs, alcohol. That was my life. Like I said, for a long time, that was it. A lot of feeling sorry for myself, and didn't really care about much. Had some toxic relationships, and eventually I got kicked out of, or I didn't get kicked out of that place, but I had 2 jobs, 2 really good jobs. I quit both of them. Couldn't pay the bills. I ended up in jail for a ticket that I didn't pay. I had a warrant. I went to jail. I had some people staying with me at the time. Drugs were involved. I flipped out. The toxic relationship ended up calling the cops to get them out. And as soon as she did that, I knew I'm going to jail because I have a warrant, and I knew it, and I wasn't doing anything about it. So cops showed up. I explained to them what happened. I mean, this woman brought a taser into my house to zap me with it, and all I wanted was them to get out of my house. But of course, I have a warrant, so I went to jail and had some time to sober up, got a clear head, got out thanks to a combination of people to get me out, paying bail, and just parents and the girl. She wasn't my girlfriend. We had a thing, toxic relationship basically. But anyway, I got out of jail. I came back. Of course, this guy had to come and get his stuff. It was his family had 2 kids and his wife, and all their stuff was in my house. So he came back, and now I've got a clear mind, and I'm like, I'm sorry, man. Like, I don't blame you. I'm not mad at you. I'm sorry for the way I acted. And he was like, it's cool, man. I understand. Like, he was really a kind of a cool dude, But anyway, so now I'm at the point where I'm drinking beer out of a cooler. I have no electricity, and a pretty depressing state. I couldn't go and stay with my parents anymore, and I couldn't stay with my parents, either one of them, because I had burned that bridge. My parents in Vegas, couldn't stay with them. My parents in Arizona, couldn't stay with them. And that is a product of my actions, my choices, So the only other person that I had was in Vegas, and I did not want to move out of state, because when I had come back this last time, I promised my son I would not leave again, because I'd been in and out of his life. And I promised him personally that I wouldn't leave again. But I had nowhere else to go. And so I moved in with my grandmother. Was there for, I don't know, maybe a month before I got kicked out because of drugs and alcohol. My stepmother invited me somewhere, and I said yes. So that started another journey for me. I got sober for a time, about almost 2 years, about 20 months. I made 20 months, met a girl, which oddly enough I wasn't looking for. And you know, I kind of started getting into the God thing, but not really the Christ thing, if that makes any sense to anybody. But anyway, I met this girl. We went on a date, and it was pretty much hook, line, and sinker from day one. So when I met her, I was living with my parents. I'm at this time 5 years ago. I was 29 years old, guys. I was 29 years old, sleeping on my parents' couch because I had been kicked out of my grandmother's house. And this girl accepted me for that. I got a job and I started working, even though I didn't like it. You know, I eventually, it's funny, it just popped up on my Facebook page a couple days ago. 5 years ago, I bought a scooter, and I was excited about it. Like, that was a big accomplishment in my life. Even though I had previously, I bought cars, like multiple cars, and paid them off, and you know, I had that, but this time it was different because I'm on this different life now, and I bought a scooter with my own money that I worked for. You know, I didn't have to sell anything to get it. I bought it. So that was exciting for me. Eventually, me and my girlfriend ended up getting a place together, and you know, things were good, and until I started drinking again. And you know, bless her heart, she stayed with me. You know, she did leave a couple times for, you know, a span of a few days or a week, something like that. And things were really bad. Things were really bad. So bad, in fact, that, you know, she was trying to call me one night just to check on me, and I wasn't answering my phone. And she came home to check on me and found me, and I don't remember how it happened or whatever, but I blacked out. She found me in the closet in a very embarrassing state. I'll just say that. And you know, I jumped up and I called my boss because I was supposed to be at work. You know, I was drinking a whole lot before going to work. So I called him and I'm like, listen, man, I'm sorry. I need help. You know, I didn't know what to say. And, you know, that wasn't enough to stop me. I continued drinking. And, basically the last straw was she came home again to check on me because she loved me. You know, anyway, she came home to check on me, and we got into a fight, and it was physical, something that I have never ever done. I never hit her, but I had her pinned, you know, and it was that night that I was like, I need detox. I need to get into some detox center, something. And
I ended up getting into a rehab. It was like a 30-day deal. And it was so bad. My alcoholism was so bad that they had to medicate me to help me get through the DTs. But during that process, I ended up discovering so much about myself, the things that I was hiding or burying, and my therapist brought in my parents on a separate occasion, brought in my wife, and I got to open up to them and confess some things to them, and it was a really good experience for me, oddly enough. I made some good friends, and some of them didn't make it. Some of them are dead right now. One of my roommates overdosed after he got out of rehab. So be careful, man, what you're doing. Anyway, so yeah, I gotten my life turned around. Of course, when I was in there, I lost my job, and I needed a job. So I'm looking for a job, and I'm passing up all these things, because it requires a CDL. I used to have a CDL, but I let it expire. Well, getting a CDL is not exactly easy or cheap. It can be cheap-ish if you study the things yourself, but let me tell you, there's a lot of laws and things that, if you're studying by yourself, it's kind of hard to pick up on that stuff. So I went to school. I got my CDL back, and as you know, this is kind of where we started. I started driving a truck. And during this time, there's a lot of road time, there's a lot of alone time, a lot of personal time, and I'm praying at this point, but still not considering myself a Christian, because I don't believe in religion, and religion is bad, and it's hateful and these things, and but I'm praying, and I'm like, my wife and I are really trying to have a child. I chose, I like this career, I like what I do, but my main goal is to have it so my wife can live in a better place. Sound familiar? Live in a better neighborhood, something safer. All the things that my first wife wanted, now I'm kind of waking up, and I want these things for my wife, for my life, but I'm sitting there and I'm praying. I'm like, I had a good life before. I had a child, and I had a good marriage and a good woman, and now I have a good woman. I got a good marriage. I was like, but why can't we have a child? What am I doing differently? What? Why? And I'm driving down the road. Driving down the road one day, and it literally was like a whisper in my ear. And the question I asked was, what's different? What am I doing different? And it was a whisper in my ear, and it said, you lived a life for me. So it was like right then and there, I'm driving down the road, and I said a little prayer in my head, and I rededicated my life to Christ, and and then I was like, the first thing that came to my head was, I have to tell my wife. And, with my history and the things that I said about religion and the things that I said about the Bible and, all these things, I'm like, she's going to think I'm nuts. Like, she's going to laugh at me or whatever. And so I told her. And when I told her, she's like, babe, that's great. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. So this is kind of cool, and so I'm on this new journey now, and I'm happy and everything, and I'm like, and I've been married to my wife, let's see, 3 years now, and I'm like, I don't know if she's saved. Like, I've been married to this woman, and I know nothing about her spiritual welfare. That used to be a big deal to me, so I asked her, I was like, are you saved? And not even sure if she even knew what that meant, and she kind of laughed. She's like, yes, babe, I'm saved. She's like, I got baptized, when I was so-and-so, like 21 or something like that. And I'm like, wow. And you've been living with me. So so this has kind of been my life now, this rededication thing, since about a year ago, actually. So I still feel kind of new to it all because it's been so long, and I've read the Bible cover to cover a couple times, and it's been so long I really don't remember a whole lot of it, and I'm doing it again right now. I'm about halfway through. It's halfway through the year. I started on the 1st. Do the math. So I'm doing the Bible in a year, and so here comes the current situation right now, and I'm going to tell you how God has worked in my life in the last couple weeks. Last week, this happened last weekend, like literally 7 days ago. I'm on the road. We're looking for a house. I'm finally to the point where my wife can quit her job. I'm making good money now, and we're looking for a house. I want to move out of Vegas because I don't want my wife there. I don't. If we end up having a kid, if we are able to, I don't want to raise a kid there. I really don't. So it's time to get out. Looking for a house. We have very specific things that we want in a house, things that we're looking for. Well, my mom saw a post, an advertisement for a house that was for rent. We wanted to buy. Right now I can't buy, but if I work on it in a year, I'll be able to. But anyway, I need to rent. And where I want to move, nothing is for rent. Everything's for sale, but nothing is for rent. But there was one house. My mom found it. My mom set up an appointment to go look at it. My wife was on her way out there, and I'm on the road. And I was about to start a 34-hour reset because I was 3 hours away from Phoenix, but I didn't have to deliver until like the day after. Like, I didn't have to deliver it until Monday, and it's Saturday, and I'm only 3 hours away. I'm not going to drive 3 hours and waste my clock, so I'm just going to get a 34-hour reset. Well, she told me she's going to be there to look at this house, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. I can be there tomorrow and not have to go to my home for home time. I can just do home time in Arizona if I can get somebody to deliver this load. So I asked, and yes, one of the local guys ended up delivering my load. I got to spend the weekend with my wife and my mother while we went and looked at this house. Again, that all just added up. It fell into place. I wasn't going to be in Phoenix. She was going to end up going to Phoenix this weekend, not last weekend. But she's like, I'm gonna go this weekend. I'm like, okay, because the house, you know, it was planned. It had to be. So I got there. We went to look at this house, and before I even went in the house, I walked around the house, the backyard. It was fenced. That's one of the things we wanted. We wanted a fence. Doggy door wasn't really a necessity because we can always add a doggy door. Fireplace or wood burning stove. 2-bathroom, you know, master bathroom. Washer and dryer included. Refrigerator. You know, those are kind of standard things, but washer and dryers aren't always included. You got to buy those, and we were prepared to do that, but this is our list. You know, we wanted these things in a house. They weren't necessarily requirements, but we wanted these things in a house. And this house had everything. It already had a big fenced yard for our dogs, fireplace, beautiful master bathroom, 2 bedrooms, big living room with an extra like game room is I think what we're gonna do with it. An Arizona room, which is just like just another room. It's outside, but it's not outside. So Arizona room and a doggy door already there. And so, you know, talked to the guy, and we left. I filled out the application right then and there. I literally grabbed one and filled it out on the counter, and gave it to the guy. And we walked around the house a few times, you know, just checking everything out. We're already planning, where are we going to put this stuff, you know? And I'm like, whoa, like, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves here. Like, we need to, you know, calm down, because, you know, I don't want to get worked up and excited if it's not, you know, going to happen. And my wife was like, no, I'm claiming it. Like, I'm claiming it. It is ours. You know, God's going to give it to us. I'm claiming it. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. So, and for like 3 days, every time we ate, you know, went to bed, we're praying about it, you know, God, if it's your will, you know, let it happen. And, you know, so I'm calling the guy, and emailed his wife, who's pretty much doing all the paperwork, and he's doing the you know, fixing up. And she's like, all right. I texted him. I was like, hey, any word? You know, and he's like, we got one more showing tonight. He's like, hang in there. You know, I'm like, okay, cool. Well, a couple days ago, I got a phone call from him, and he's like, well, I'm supposed to ask you, are you still interested? I'm like, yeah, I am. He's like, good, because you got it. So, of course, very happy, and I like got out of my truck, and I looked up. I was like, thank you. You know, I have to, because, you know, I literally haven't prayed about anything as hard or as consistently as I have this house, you know. And then last night I'm going to bed, and I get an email. It was kind of a bomb dropped on me. Like, she was kind of wanting to know when I could move in, and July 1st was what we had said, because that's what we thought our lease was up. Well, I told her our lease actually says July 31st is when it's up, so we have to pay rent for July. And you know, so that, but we will have the money, you know, in a couple of weeks. And she's like, well, I don't want to pressure you, but we have 2 people that are ready to move in right now. We want to rent it to you, but, you know, if it's going to fall through, let me know now. I was like, no, it's not going to fall through. So I started a GoFundMe last night, to help out with the cost, to not only get the rest of the money to move in, but moving van. You know, we're going across the state, you know, a different state, out of state, so it's going to cost some money, and we will have the money, but we don't have it right now, kind of thing. So I started a GoFundMe, and one of my wife's mentors caught wind of it, and she said, "You don't have to do that." Her and her husband are giving us the money. You know, and it's not a small chunk of money, you know. So yeah, she was like, "You don't have to do that." So you know, and I've been stressing, and I know I shouldn't stress because I've been praying about it, and I'm like, I'm leaving it in your hands, you know, but I'm still like trying to figure out how we're going to come up with it, you know, and I'm not worried about being able to come up with it. I'm worried about being able to come up with it in time, because I can have it. I'm going to have it. That's not the problem. It's the time frame is now the problem. And now I don't have to worry about that, you know. And my wife was like, you know, she called me and she told me, and she's like, you know, God is good. You know, thank you, Jesus. And, you know, it's kind of weird hearing me say those things as well because of the way that I've been living, you know. But, you know, God has definitely blessed my life beyond words. I should be dead. I left a few things out, you know. I had an incident when I was young. You know, I was a kid, thought driving would be cool, and almost ran my dad's car into a gas pump at the gas station. You know, the clerk saw me, jumped over the counter, ran out, pushed the car forward while my dad ran out and you know, put the car in park and all that stuff. So, and there are a few experiences where I really should not be alive. I shouldn't be here, but God has blessed me, you know. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you, you know, coming from where I come from, and there's people out there who, you know me, like my battle buddy from the Army. We talked a lot about philosophy and things like that, and Satanism. So, you know, for me to, I mean, it feels new to me, you know, even though it's not really. And there's another thing I left out, and I'm really, this is a long video already, but there was one very big eye-opener that I left out from somebody who I hadn't talked to in like 5 years, and God gave them a message to give to me, and there's absolutely no way that person knew anything that was going on in my life at that point in time, and it was head on exactly what I needed at that time. So anyway, this has been long. I told you it would be, but I just it's something that I've been tossing around for a while, and I'm like, I don't know if I should do that. It's not what I created my channel for, but sometimes when the Lord speaks, you need to listen, and I think that's just what I'm doing right now. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to upload this video because it's so long, but I made the video, and whatever happens to it happens. But anyway, that is all I have for now. Reach for the sky, thank a trucker, and God bless.